Hi, dear friends. Good morning. Welcome to Akshaya Dare. ಸೊ ಇವತ್ತು 4 ಆಗಸ್ಟ್ 2023. So I hope you guys are enjoying the learning and also working towards to improve your communication in English. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಕಲಿತಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಅಂದ್ಕೊತೀನಿ. ಹಾಗೇ ನ್ಯೂಸ್ ಪೇಪರನ್ನ ಡೈಲಿ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟೀಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಕೇಷನ್ ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಅಂದ್ಕೊತೀನಿ. ಸೊ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಪೇಪರನ್ನು ಓದೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ ನೀವಿನ್ನೂ ನನ್ನ ಚಾನಲ್ಗೆ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದರೆ ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ದ ಚಾನಲ್. ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಚಾನಲ್ಗೆ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಕ್ರೈಬ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. ಹಾಗೆ ಲೈಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ಕಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ನನ್ನ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಇಷ್ಟ ಆದರೆ ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಸ್ಗೂ ಕೂಡ. ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಕೊಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಪರ್ಚುನಿಟೀಸ್ನ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೋದು. ಸೊ ಬನ್ನಿ ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಪೇಪರಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಿದೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡೋಣ. ಲೆಟ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ರೀಡಿಂಗ್ ದ ನ್ಯೂಸ್ ಪೇಪರ್. आइए क्या है आज का पेपर में. So let's see what's in the today newspaper. देखिए, so Dravid has promised Grahajyoti. Himalayan vulture breeds in captivity. Data protection bill tabled in Lok Sabha. Services PMI touches 13 years high in July. Should the age of consent be revised in India? Bombay High Court's session starts be debate. Gukesh overtakes Anand in live rankings. Government imposes curbs on import of laptops, computers, tablets. New regulations require import licenses with immediate effect. Move will hit short-term availability of Dell, HP, Lenovo, Apple laptops, but will be a boost for domestic sector. Devices imported for research and development given exemption. Over 9 lakh trees likely to be axed for Great Nicobar project. Many government schools lack access to water. Supreme Court, can you equate Article 370 with basic structure? Activists give thumbs up to government taxis or to booking app proposal. Commuters complain of increased cancellation of rides on Namayatri app. Auto Rickshaw Drivers Union General Secretary says the problem of refusing rides has existed ever since autos were introduced. Family of 4, including 2 children, found dead in Kadagodi plant. Man suspected to have killed his wife, 2 daughters, and ended life. The state of decomposed bodies also indicate they were dead at least 2 or 3 days ago, says a senior police official. Man bites off wife's finger over domestic row in city. Golden Jubilee celebration of Tax Practitioners Association. Raid on 45 BBMP officers. 3 killed as water tank collapses on them. Man force feeds pesticides to 2 minor girls at Devanali. Modern antidepressants can reduce risk of depressive relapse for bipolar patients. Vocal concert by Ranjani Vasuki on Sunday. 28% of high schools, 32% of primary schools lack access to drinking water report. Around 12% of primary and 10% of high schools do not have library facility, even as 61.42% of students surveyed say they like reading books. Student learning achievement continues to be poor in the state. Achievement by grade and gender. Government eyes 854 crore CSR funding for education sector and skill training. The state received 1,278 crore in 2021 to 22 as CSR, third highest in the country after Maharashtra and Gujarat. It is projected that about 2,000 crore would be the CSR due for period up to 2023. 1,295 students graduate from University of Agricultural Sciences. Spotlight. Pedestrian safety drive running roughshod over street vendors' right. A recent drive by the Bengaluru police and the state civic body to raid payments of encroachments by street vendors has sparked a larger debate on their rights. Under the Street Vendors Protection of Livelihood and Regulation of Street Vending Act 2014, finds KV Aditya Bharadwaj. Metro Plus, Candid Camo and the Art of Improve. Master Udugaru Bekagiddari is running to packed houses in Karnataka. Director Nitin Krishnamurthy and the cinematographer Arvind Kashyap talk about its making. Documenting Time Stirred Still, a solo exhibition by artist Jai Kishan Tada is currently on display at the KMF Museum of Art. Enjoy classical music favorites at the orchestral concert this weekend. Contaminated water. Residents of Kavadigara Hatti in shock following 3 deaths. Even 4 days after the first death was reported, many people in the Dalit colony, including children, continue to complain of illness. No trace of poison. Analysis of samples shows water supplied unfit for consumption. CM asks Center to hold air show during Dasra in Mysore. Center urged to establish Science City in Bengaluru. Yogeshwar's petitions in mega city scam cases rejected. Raghagnanendra booked for comments on Kargi. Chairman for State Police Compliance Authority named. Dialysis Center's top call of steer. When textile designs are set in stone. Writer and historian Dr. Chitra Madhavan will be in Bangalore this weekend to give a talk of Kanjivaram motifs and its inspiration from temple architecture. An installation to talk about sustainability in waste management. A play around the Salman Khan fandom. Baswalingappa and Pusa episode, The Birth of Dalit Sangarsha Samiti, a convention of writers and artists. Friday, first Vandaya Sahitya Sammelana held. Some key Dalit writers bringing a slice of Dalit life on stage. Daklakatha Devi Kavya and We the People of India, directed by K.P. Lakshman, document the aspirations of Dalit communities. The Kaligas are among the most marginalized. In recent years, youngsters have started to engage themselves in selling plastic waste, brooms, and work in fields for daily wages. APHC issues stay on construction of houses in Amaravati. 1,000 booked for protesting against Shamshi's remarks. Members of Naya Service Society organized prayer march against Kerala's speaker blasphemous remark on Hindu gods. A case would not deter our resolve to defend faith, says Outfit's vice president. It's high time courts are bestowed supervisory jurisdiction on media. Families have lost years of 151 organ donors facilitated on Indian Organ Donation Day. Kochi police take 4 Karnataka counterparts into custody. Moral policing: 4 men assault auto rickshaw driver. Stop for road safari in Kolukkumalai, Kerala HC panel. Nuclear signaling: the need for new guard rails. Let's read this editorial page. Nuclear signaling: the need for new guard rails. The conflict in Ukraine and the recourse to nuclear rhetoric have revived concerns about a nuclear escalation management between the major nuclear powers. Since the end of the Cold War, the United States Russia nuclear rivalry had taken a backseat. Instead, North Korea, Iran, and India, Pakistan got attention, with many analysts getting nostalgic about nuclear stability during the Cold War. But as it is becoming clear now, the in today's changed political environment, the escalation management lessons of the Cold War no longer seem to work for the US and Russia. Deterrence failure. In June 2021, US and Russian presidents Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin met in Geneva. Nuclear arms, but no progress proved possible. As concerns grew about the Russian troop presence in Belarus and the Ukrainian border, Central Intelligence Agency Director Bill Burns flew to Moscow in November to spell out the consequences of aggression. In January 2022, US Secretary of State Antony J. Blinken met Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Geneva to reiterate the message. On February 24, Russia began its special military operation in Ukraine. US attempts to deter Russian aggression had failed. Even as North Atlantic Treaty Organization leaders met to decide their response, Mr. Biden made it clear that the US was determined to avoid a third world war or allowing the conflict to escalate into a NATO-Russia conflict. After the freezing of Russian reserves and a slew of financial, energy-related and political sanctions, other elements of military assistance, lethal and non-lethal, began to take shape. Intelligence sharing and restoring internet connectivity was the first step. The second was the supply of ammunition and some weapon systems which the Ukrainian forces were familiar with. NATO deepened its military involvement by providing gradually more and more sophisticated weapon systems, beginning with the Javelin and Stinger missiles and moving on to Patriot missile defense batteries, long range IMERS, Storm Shadow, and Scalp long range missiles, and now F 16 as Russian attempts to deter NATO involvement had failed. On February 7, 2022, Mr. Putin warned that if Ukraine attempts to take back Crimea, European countries will be in a conflict with Russia, which is a leading nuclear power superior to many NATO countries in terms of nuclear force. Annual nuclear exercises, normally scheduled for autumn, were announced for February 17, with Mr. Putin personally witnessing them. Announcing the launch of special military operations, his words of caution were, whoever tries to endure Russia will face consequences never seen in history. To drive home the threat, on February 27, Russian nuclear forces were placed on a special combat readiness will leave for all personnel cancelled. Even as the US issued blunt warnings to Russia against using tactical nuclear weapons. In the first week of March, NATO decided against a no fly zone, and Poland. Slovakia and Bulgaria announced that they would not be sending MiG aircraft to Ukraine on account of Russian threats against their airfields from where these aircraft were to take up. Russian officials tried to downplay the nuclear threat by pointing out that Russia would resort to nuclear use only if faced with an existential threat, while US officials tried to convey reassurance to their European allies that while Mr. Putin's threats were to be taken seriously, there were no indications of unusual activity at nuclear sites. Mr. Biden declared on April 24th, we are neither encouraging nor enabling Ukraine to strike behind its borders, adding that the US was not seeking regime change in Russia. In short, the US objectives were to support Ukraine, bolster NATO unity, and avoid any direct conflict with Russia. Ukraine is not a NATO member and so does not have the security of the nuclear umbrella provided by US policy of extended deterrence. Russia's resort to nuclear rhetoric failed to deter NATO involvement, though it influenced its phase and timing. Therefore, both Russia and the US are operating in a gray zone. Taking turns at escalatory rhetoric even as they probe each other's red lines. During the Cold War, the US and the former Soviet Union engaged in multiple proxy wars. Vietnam in the 1960s and Afghanistan in the 1980s, but these were in distant theaters. Cold War lessons. Deterrence is fundamentally based on the assumption that both adversaries are rational enough to judge when costs outweigh the benefits of the act. Nuclear deterrence adds a conundrum with their huge arsenals that provided for assured second strike capability. Neither the US nor the Soviet Union had an incentive to try a surprise first strike. This realization was crucial in shaping nuclear deterrence theory. Thomas Schelling, whose writings during the 1960s and 70s shaped nuclear deterrence thinking, he won the Economics Nobel in 2005, concluded that nuclear weapons were not unstable as usable but had political utility in terms of preventing a war with another nuclear power. Clearly, Schelling was looking at the situation between the US and the Soviet Union, which had no territorial dispute. Schelling also concluded that even though any use was irrational, the nuclear threat had to be credible in order to deter. This introduced a degree of uncertainty into the equation. Using his economics training, he interpreted the uncertainty as a risk that could be analyzed in terms of probabilities. Risk was intended to induce rationality in the adversaries, realizing the conundrum. He concluded that the key to making a nuclear deterrence credible is through escalation and raising the risk. That in the final analysis leaves something to chance. This, along with the lessons of the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, kept the US and Soviet rhetoric in check during the Cold War, even as they engaged in proxy wars outside Europe and away from NATO and Warsaw Pact territories. Today, there is no Warsaw Pact, and NATO has expanded it to include a number of former Warsaw Pact members. The Ukraine conflict has persuaded Sweden and Finland to give up their long standing neutrality and seek security under NATO's nuclear umbrella. Probing for red lines. Russia's nuclear doctrine issued on June 2nd, 2020 specifies two conditions under which Russia would use nuclear weapons. In response to the use of nuclear weapons and other types of weapons of mass destruction against it or its allies, and in the case of uh, aggression against the Russian Federation with the use of conventional weapons. When the very existence of the state is put under threat, Mr. Putin has declared more than once that Ukrainian and Russians are one people with a shared history. Russia, therefore, does not see Ukraine does not see Ukraine as entirely sovereign. Second, there is the cited escalate to this de-escalate approach that implies using tactical nuclear weapons to overcome a stalemate on the battlefield, thus posing a termination of hostilities on favorable terms. In its 2022 national security strategy, the US rejected this by declaring that first use would not lead to de-escalation on Russian terms but alter the nature of conflict, creating potential for uncontrolled escalation. US caution is reflected in calibrating the supply of more sophisticated weapons by continuously probing Russian red lines even though Ukrainian demands continue to grow. Meanwhile, it suits Russia to increase ambiguity. It is also likely that since Russia failed to achieve its military objectives, its thresholds are evolving. The path breaking studies of Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky in economics showed that humans often tend to double down on bad bets because of loss aversion. The Cold War escalation management lessons apply to a different world. Today, the US and Russia no longer enjoy parity, and Russia's reliance are fudging. Nuclear signaling today is taking place in uncharted political territory. New guardrails are necessary if the nuclear taboo has to be preserved. Let's read. It's a little difficult matter. Let's go to the next page. Next article: India needs evidence-based ethics driven medicine. The recent push to integrate Ayush medicinal systems into mainstream health care to achieve universal health coverage and decolonize medicine is a pluralistic approach that would require every participating system to meet basic safety and efficacy standards. Homeopathy does not meet these standards, but its supporters have argued in the Lancet Regional Health Southeast Asia recently for expanding its use by citing demand and decolonization disregarding its flaws. Efficacy and safety of homeopathy. Evidence of homeopathy's efficacy is weak. The first carefully conducted and well reported double blind randomized controlled trial, the new Nuremberg salt test, noted that the symptoms are changes which the homeopaths claim to observe as an effect of their medicines were the fruit of imagination, self deception, and preconceived opinion, if not fraud. In the evidence based medicine ladder, the topmost rung is systematic reviews and meta-analysis that exhaustively pool and critically appraise evidence from existing studies. Multiple systematic reviews and meta-analysis have found that across ailments, population groups, adults versus children, study types, placebo controlled versus other trial types, and treatment regimes, individualized versus non individualized, homeopathic treatments lack clinically significant effects. Reviews that somewhat support homeopathy's efficacy also caution over the low evidence quality and raise concerns about its clinical use. Recently, researchers demonstrated that more than half of the 193 homeopathic trials in the last two decades were not registered. Unregistered trials showed some evidence of efficacy, but registered trials did not. There was reporting bias and other problematic practices, throwing the validity and reliability of evidence thus generated into doubt. Further, the World Health Organization has warned against homeopathic treatments for HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria, as well as flu and diarrhea in infants, saying it has no place in their treatment. Evidence is accumulating that homeopathy does not work for cancers and may not help to reduce the adverse effects of cancer treatments. Contrary to lay belief, instead, treatments have been linked to both non fatal and fatal adverse events as well as their aggravation. Seeking homeopathic care also delays the application of evidence based clinical care in several cases. It has caused injuries and sometimes death. On standards, homeopathy supporters argue that the standards commonly used in evidence based medicine are not suitable for judging the holistic effects of homeopathy. This claim can be debunked. First, the standards are not conveniently chosen by practitioners of allopathic medicine for themselves. As and other methods for collecting and assessing evidence are collaboratively set and updated by a global community pushing for evidence-based medicine that includes epidemiologists, biostatisticians, quality improvement researchers, implementation managers, and several others behind clinicians. These methods have weeded out practices in allopathic medicine that fail to meet the evidence criteria. Further, multiple disciplines such as psychology, economics, community health, implementation science, and public policy behind medicine have successfully adapted evidence synthesis methods to establish their claims. Second, what are the methods that will work? Homeopathy advocates have failed to invent valid alternative evidence synthesis frameworks suited for testing its efficacy and safety, which are also acceptable to the critics. Third, the claim about homeopathy being holistic is typically paired with evidence-based medicine being a reductionist. In 2023, most exponents of evidence-based medicine are aware and accepting of biopsychosocial approaches toward health endorsed by WHO. Predominantly composed of evidence-based medicine practitioners and supporters. Further, evidence-based medicine does not and should not stop at establishing empirical evidence. The quest is also to discover and explain the mechanisms underlying the evidence. In the last century, there has been no concrete evidence for proposed medicines mechanisms of action for homeopathy. No mechanistic, molecular, psychological, physiological, biochemical, or otherwise evidence to explain how concepts such as like cues like extreme dilution and materializes spiritual purpose result in better health. In the same period, several allopathic modern medicine practices have updated themselves based on growing scientific evidence. Adopting a pluralistic approach in medicine can decolonize medicine. In India, homeopathy is at odds with this. Homeopathy was introduced in 1839 in India by Austrian physician J.M. Honigberger. While defining traditional medicine can be subjective, homeopathy was introduced quite recently in India's history during the colonial period for colonial benefit. Hence, its traditional tag is untenable. Of course, not all colonial era practices need to be standard. Those with health and developmental benefits, such as evidence based elements of allopathic medicine and gender role and caste reforms, should be retained. The argument to reject homeopathy is not just based on its coloniality, but chiefly on the lack of evidence for efficacy. Some evidence for lack of safety, no substantive progress and mechanisms of action in the last century, and homeopathic practitioners' escapist arguments. Homeopathy supporters offer testimonials from luminaries such as Gandhi and Tagore, but Gandhi's writings have scant mentions. We could not find any actual evidence of favorable comments by Tagore, hence decolonization cannot be a reason to support homeopathy. India's path to universal health care must be grounded in evidence based and ethics driven medicines. This is about the homeopathy medicine. Let's go to the next page. Should the age of consent be revised in India? We first need more and better information on what kind of sexual practices adolescents are engaging in, at what ages, and the impact of these interactions on them. Tools cannot replace a journalist remains of the day. The fear that artificial intelligence and machine learning can replace journalists is exaggerated, at least for now. Three bills passed in the Rajya Sabha in opposition's absence. Can center restricts laptop PC and tablet imports. MEA hopes for normalcy in NCR ahead of G20 meet. Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi says G20 members have not been briefed about situation in NCR following violence in Gurugram. No leaders invitees are expected to arrive on September 8. Over 9 lakh trees likely to be cut down. Manipur High Court directs status quo at a proposed burial site. Man mob loots police armory in Manipur. Policeman killed. Experts go back on letter raising concerns over cheetah deaths. Article 370 was a compact entered into between two sovereigns possible, but it is not possible that such a compact could be overridden by the sovereign of the succeeding state government of India. Save the Children loses its FCRA permit. Amid Road Data Protection Bill tabled. Legislation introduced in the Lok Sabha after several attempts earlier, opposition leaders say that the new law is likely to create a surveillance state and will torpedo functioning of non-governmental organizations, while the entire government universe will be exempted from the rules. With the 6 sittings left, center oppositions tried to end the stand-up over Manipur debate. Privilege notices are admitted against O'Brien Chadda. LS pauses. Delhi Services Bill amid a walkout. India summons a German envoy to press Saria's case. Child's mother met with MPs in Parliament House on Wednesday seeking a return. New Delhi says it will continue to take up the matter with Berlin, indicating widening diplomatic differences. Villages cities to display plagues on local brewards. Counterfeit medicines seized. One person held in Kolkata. Endangered Himalayan vulture bred in captivity for the first time in India. Minor girl allegedly raped, body burnt in brick lane. Eminent literature Andy Mahanur passes away. External symbols devotion. Several hurt in South Korean stabbing rampage, say police. Israel court hears case against law protecting PM from being removed. Poland and Lithuania say they fear provocations from Russia. Belarus Islamic State group says its leader was killed by militants in Syria. Pakistan approves signing of security pact with the US. Coup backers rally in Niger as security worries escalate. Trump to face a judge over full fiasco charges. Saudi Kuwait reject Iran claims to gas field. Services PM 8 to 13-year high in July lifted by export surge. Services sector output rebounded from June's 3-month low to fastest since June 2010, buoyed by strong demand and new business gains. S&P Global India and Services Purchasing Managers Index. Toyota unveils full hybrid EV Wellfire. Price starts at 1.2 crore. Sun Pharma Q1 net slides 23% on Taro. MRF Q1 net surges 5-fold to 581 crore on higher sale volume. Indian physio Rajkumar to assist Pakistan hockey team. Sunil Dev, manager in India's 2017-20 WC campaign, passes away. Moeen confirms retirements, will not travel to India for Test series. Tamim steps down from ODI captaincy, pulls out of Asia Cup. Kukesh overtakes Ananda in live world rankings. Besides the achieve Pragnananda and Nihal Sarin also progress to the next round with his Indian men to have a rewarding day as Ampi, Harika, Vaishali and Divya advance. India begins with the 7-2 thrashing of China. Malaysia beats Pakistan. Tilak impresses but India comes a cropper in modest chase in first T20I. Rohan's blistering turn highlights South's success in high scoring final. Germany joins list of big name exits while Morocco makes history. Sindhu, Srikanth, Pranay and Jawat in last 8. I love hockey, so I am surviving Shivendra. Verstappen and Red Bull have left the others far behind. Teammate Perez has flattered to receive after two successes at the beginning. The battle for the second best team has been quite impressive and would be the one to watch out for when the season resumes with the Dutch GP on August 27. Test yourself on some assorted trivia and questions across various sports and games. This is the last page. Science. The curious case of rising lactose intolerance. Lactose intolerance product symptoms which can be uncomfortable but is never dangerous. It is a specific digestive issue associated with the consumption of dairy products. Breastfeeding week and dated wisdom. Lactation stigma still assail mothers. Text and context. This is the last page, guys. Vacant post in Indian Administrative Services 1365. Additional troops enlisted by Russia in 2023. Number of government websites that spaced hacking incidents. Quantum of fall in deforestation of Brazil Amazon. Number of entities recognized as startups by government. Coups in Niger causes and concerns. Why did Niger's military stage a coup to oust President Bazoum? How has the world responded? What are the external and interests at stake in Niger? Why is the regional response divided? What is behind the rising anti-French sentiments and pro-Russian slogans in Niger? Why does Niger have historic multiple coups? Why is the biological diversity bill facing opposition? How does the Act's implementation raise concerns about the proposed amendments? What are the industries' view on the Biological Diversity Act? What are the priorities of India's environmental ministry? This is the last page. Ghostly mansions to spooky ships, exploring the haunted settings in films. Evil houses are those with supernatural squatters are horror movies stapled through the ages. From Amit Ville to Bhargavi Nilayam, these brick and mortar structures address our subliminal dread of the breach of our safe spaces. The African nation of Niger has been recently in the news following a coup. Here is a quiz about the part of Africa. So this is the last page, guys. Read this article like about the text and context, which is about the foreign countries and the past. I hope you guys have enjoyed the newspaper reading and at least read the newspaper for 2 hours to make you better in communication. And see you in the upcoming videos. Please subscribe the channel, like and comment for more videos related to healthcare education and personal interviews. See you in the upcoming videos. Have a great day. Bye bye. Take care.